Blessings, everybody. This is Dr. Lori with Still Whole Wellness. I trust that this podcast finds you all well and at peace. I want to introduce the ladies of the hour. First of all, we have the amazing Dr. R.D. Walters. Blessings, Dr. Walters. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well now that I'm in the room with you, amazing queens. Uh, and then we have, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We have the amazing Lakisha Askins here with us. She is
Hello.
the Blessings Queen. She is the author of Lilly in the Dark. So for those of you who have been following Still Whole Wellness and Dr. Walters is holding her copy up. For those of you who have been following Still Whole Wellness, you all know that we recently started a book club, which I've been wanting to do for months and months and months. Clients have been requesting that we do it, and I was kind of hawing around about it, but we finally got it done. And so Lakisha's book is our second read in the book club, and it is the absolute perfect book for our second book. So welcome to you, ladies. Welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for being here. So let's dive right into this thing. So I really wanted to definitely have Dr. Walters here with me for this conversation, because a lot of the things that you talk about in the book, Lakisha, are happen to be Dr. Walters' specialty. You know, so I definitely thought it appropriate to have her here with us today. So first of all, Lakisha, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Again, thank you for having me. I am Baltimore, Maryland, born and bred. I've been here all of my life. Mother of four, playwright, book write, music write. I just write. It's just is what I call it. This book here, this is my second book. My first one was a family fiction novel, and that's something that you read together. And this book, I spoke with you about a while ago that it came as a dare because of my faith, and we were having a very in-depth conversation about promiscuity, and a lot of people always equate promiscuity to sexual trauma. It kind of goes hand in hand. We see someone that's a prostitute, oh, they might have been. It's kind of the first thing. You don't know she probably was molested. It's always, for a woman to embrace her sexuality, it had to have been associated with some sort of trauma.
Yeah.
In a lot of times that is the case. There's nothing, wrong with the idea, but it's always associated. The trauma then it kind of gives off that like this trauma is now producing a negative response because of this woman being sexual, and her being or choosing to be sexual does not have to say that it's a negative response. It's just the response, so we're not gonna go that far into too deep, but that was how the conversation went.
But I like that though. I like what you're saying right there, that it doesn't necessarily have to be something negative. I love that. Right. I love that thought.
It's just what it is.
Just what
how
it is.
She chose to embrace it. And because of that conversation, I'm a very visual person, so I was kind of painting a picture to the person, and we were talking about it, and I'm like, you know what, I like the storyline. I'm familiar with the storyline, so I can speak on it pretty easily. So I said, I'm gonna write that. And they said, you're not gonna do that. How are you gonna do that? And you're a Christian. And I said, because I'm gonna do it, and I'm a Christian. And this is how it's gonna be. It's right. Easy. There. That's exactly what it is. Like I'm going to do it, and I am a Christian. So how's that gonna work out for you is the question. But I'm gonna do it. And that was, it was all in fun. When I started it, I wasn't giving it as much attention as I thought because I didn't feel like I was doing it like I was led to do it initially because it was fun. But then I started to write, and this woman, who again is very familiar, began to take on a life of her own, and then the story was being told to me, and I'm just regurgitating the information and put it on paper, and now we have this amazing piece of work that I think by far is my best work.
Well, it definitely has me hooked. I've been called a nerd in my home because every time my wife turns around, I'm like, got my head in this book.
You've been called a nerd because they haven't read the book.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about the main character, Lilly? How did you said that you feel connected to her? How so?
Well, because I also am a woman who have suffered, sexual trauma, other trauma as well, but sexual trauma is the one I think that stands out the most of my past. And so to hear her story and identify with her decisions, I could solely relate to because of what I went through. But what I appreciate about this character is I didn't just take that. I didn't just go with my own story, though that was easy to do. One, because it's not just me reading the book and it's not just people who went through what I went through. It's women who have not been sexually abused. They have been emotionally or physically abused. Any of that still keeps them repressed, like they're still within themselves. They don't know how to, they're afraid to be vulnerable. So I spoke with multiple women who have suffered any sort of abuse. One, then I spoke with women who didn't suffer any abuse. And I just wanted to know if you could just embrace your sexuality, period. Not because it's anything negative, just because you're a woman and you want to embrace that. What are the things that you would like to do? What are the things you would like to see? Then if you were to go to this imaginary house, like what rooms? But the crazy thing is, and the reason why I know that it's not solely about trauma is because the answers were very identical. So if this group of women, if the response is because of what they went through, then you have these women who didn't go through it. But this is just about womanhood and sensuality and choice. This is not solely, and I want to make sure that I stress that I am not saying that in some cases that there are not women who respond this way. And if this is not something that they enjoy or want to do because it's something that they choose to and they like and they feel like they have to because of what they were subjected to younger, that's a different situation. Because you do have people who were prostitutes and things like that and feel like that's all they're worth. And that's a different, category. But I feel like that's the part that we speak about most. So I wanted to come from this angle with this character. And she just kind of took on a mind of her own, and being a mother, I think she was a mother of three. I always think she had three. I'm sorry. Think back to it. But being a mother, being in a marriage that she loved her husband. It was not that she didn't love her husband. Why she loved her husband? She loved her children, but why she chose to have these children? Why she chose to have this life? So she's a mother. She goes to work. A hard worker. She's a friend. She's family oriented. These are very familiar things for most women. As is the other part of herself. We just don't get a chance to talk about that part.
So I want to bring Dr. Walters into the conversation to kind of speak to that sexual vulnerability piece and expression. What was your response to the character Lilly?
I have so many things to say. I love this character. I love this character for so many different reasons. What I love first and foremost, short of some of the other characters that have a more damaging presence in her life, what I love is that she has support and love and a trusting space in her aunt, right? And in that, even though nothing's perfect, even though nothing's perfect, she knows that there is a place where she can be vulnerable. Again, even though nothing's perfect, there is this place where she does feel safe, where she can be vulnerable, where she can kind of express things that she would be embarrassed otherwise to express. So I like that. I love that you made it clear that it's not just women who have been sexually assaulted or sexually traumatized. Short of the generation growing now, short of the young generation now, we have a history, a world history, a life from the very beginning history of submission as women. And it doesn't matter which country you go to or how progressive you are or what progressive country you're in, there is still an experience and a tradition of submissiveness and suppression, right? So we are expected to have children. We are expected to get married. We are expected to want what our husbands tell us where to want. And we also have, historically, we learn what we like. Even those of us who are attracted to the same gender, oftentimes we learn what we like from the same sex that has no idea oftentimes how to please us, right? Mm-hmm. It is our job to teach them how to please us as individuals. Mm-hmm. But because we have been so suppressed and we don't want to talk about it, and we don't want to be honest, and we don't want to be open, and we're afraid to be vulnerable, we're embarrassed about a lot of the things that we're feeling, we learn what we're supposed to like from men who have absolutely no clue what it feels like to be a woman. Mm-hmm. Right?
So true.
And so it is very taboo. Trust me, just being in the field that I'm in, I find a lot of resistance just with the conversation, right? And it's the conversation of not just sex, but of intimacy, right? And it's very taboo to be body positive forward. It's very taboo to be sexually positive forward. It's very taboo to know what you want. It's very taboo to walk into a relationship, a sexual relationship, and already know what you like. Oftentimes it was considered very taboo. So to have something that is not necessarily as extreme as it seems, the extreme part is the ability to have the conversation. The extreme part is the ability to say, hey, this is what I like. But the desire itself isn't that extreme. It's just been taught to be a very taboo subject, right? Yep. Anything regarding pleasurable sex for women has been taught to be extremely taboo. So we are supposed to sit there silently and like what we've been given, period, right? So how do we ever get our fantasies out? How do we ever get our pleasure across? How do we ever get our vulnerability respected? How do we ever get any of these things if we're not allowed to share what we're interested in? And so, you know, Lillian is not alone. She's just one of the people willing to speak out loud, right? And I love that about her, because it brings other people into the fold to say, oh, well, okay, maybe what I'm thinking isn't that bad. Maybe I can share it with someone. Maybe someone will understand. And truth be told, oftentimes, though we learn what we're supposed to like from men, men are really waiting, right? Men especially. Women have a different dynamic, and men with men also have a different dynamic, because there's this openness there, right? There's this understanding there. But when opposite sex come together, they often collide with the conversation, because no one knows how to just walk into it and feel comfortable and not take it personally and not be offended and not be jealous and not be insecure. You know what I mean? They have all of these different whirlwinds of things happening that are absolutely unnecessary if you just open yourself up to the idea.
Yep.
Right? Of pleasure.
This conversation is like blowing my mind already. We're like 10 minutes in or something, I don't know, and it's already just tripping me out. I recall, I'm everyone here should know by now that I'm a sexual assault survivor as well. And I definitely recall a point in my life where I looked around and I realized I didn't initiate sex. I was very uncomfortable with initiating sex. Extremely. And so it was a really strange kind of a world to walk in, because there would be times that I wanted sex, but because of the sexual assault and the way that my family kind of handled me afterward, I felt like to initiate was like in some way shameful or dirty, or it meant that I was fast, or whatever negative connotation you want to put there. And so for so long, I went through a whole marriage where I don't think I ever initiated sex, ever.
Wow.
How
long were you married?
12 years.
12 years and never initiated sex.
12 years, and I never If I did, I don't recall it.
So
I don't
it's
ever
funny.
recall
It's
doing
funny that you say that, because, and I've looked at it from that perspective. But now that you say it, if you go back to the story, Lilly speaks a lot about manipulating from the outside, and that was a huge part of That's All Me. Because you learn some of it, you give to the signs. They say, well, Leos are this, and stuff like that. That's more of a personality thing. But for what you just said about initiation, I was never the initiator too, but I learned the individual enough to know how to get them to choose to do what I wanted them to do. And that's what Lilly, and you'll see that as you continue on through the book, she speaks on that when they say, how could you do this? And you allowed them, and she's like, you're not getting it. I didn't allow them to do anything to me. Anything they did, I chose that. I wanted that. Nobody is able to do anything to me that I don't want them to do. It just doesn't look that way. I made a choice before you made the choice. I made the choice to manipulate you to think you made the choice. And that was about control. And that's me all day. That was about control, because you lose so much of it with the assault. So you have to find a way to get that back. So for me, that's what I did. So you learn that if he eats a certain food, or if then that he's excited, or if he's relaxed, he gets bath and can play his game and comfortable, he's excited, excitable. Or if I wear a certain dress, or if I do this, these are, I don't know, you learn that you're mate enough to know what to do. So are you initiating it, or are you not, is the question in those situations.
Gotcha. It's so interesting that you say that. I too, I'm sure everybody knows, I too am a sexual assault survivor. And I had the exact opposite experience that Dr. Lori had. I initiated sex all the time. And matter of fact, like if I needed a hug, I initiated sex. If I needed a conversation, I initiated sex. If I was excited about an accomplishment, I initiated sex, right? Because that's how I expressed every emotion, right? And I didn't have a problem initiating sex until I was in a relationship with someone I really cared for. And we were together for about 8 years. And for a portion of our relationship, and I'm sure it had a lot more to do with other things going on in our relationship, but for a portion of our relationship, he became very bothered by the fact that I was initiating sex. And ultimately, of course, in life, you just have to find a balance, between initiating sex and allowing yourself to be taken. And I think that's the same with men and women. I don't think that that's a feminine or a masculine thing. I think there just has to be balance, right? And whatever balance that is depends on the people in that relationship, right? But I remember there was a time for me, and I took it very personally, where, sometimes I would grab him, I would do certain things to let him know that I was interested in sex. And his response was, why can't you let me be the man? Right? And at the time, I didn't know how to let him be the man. So I would just be very angry and turned off by the time he initiated anything, because I feel like I'm always open. I'm with you. And so unless we're having issues, you should know that I'm always open to be taken by you, right? I'm always available and I'm always open to be taken by you, unless we're already having issues. So sitting around and waiting for him to initiate things was it was nerve-wracking for me. So basically what I heard is that we can't make love until you decide that the time is appropriate. Right? Which was a problem for me. It was a problem for me, and then it affected our sex it affected our intimacy, not just our sex, but it affected our intimacy on several different levels, because there were so many times where I wanted to express myself. I wanted to express my attraction. I wanted to express my love. And sometimes having sex with him had nothing to do with him, but everything to do with how I felt about myself in that moment. And I wasn't able to ever act on any of those emotions. And so I was just like sitting there, being the sexy person I thought I was, you know what I mean? Like waiting for you to initiate. And I started to become very resentful,
One of the things that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I really appreciate about the character Lilly is that as you bring up the word intimacy, Dr. Walters, is that she's becoming intimate with herself. You know, and I love watching that and reading that process where she is really beginning to. I mean, but it's so beautiful. Like, so how did you do that, Lakisha?
So listen, okay, all right. So that was a bit more difficult than what it looks, because again, I'm having conversations with myself and then others as well. But one, I needed to have a wide range of age groups to do that. Because, and then talking to people who, because I don't want to tell a story, who have had thoughts of same-sex relationships, as well as not had the thoughts of it, because this character is not a person who she's a straight woman, but she had to learn what she liked and what she didn't like. That's also a story that's not being told from the woman's perspective. You hear it, only time you hear that story is that was during college days. That's the only time you've ever heard, that story from, and I'm like, yeah, okay, but she had to learn herself in every way. So the scene that when she had that experience, the woman said to her, to know me is to know you. To love me is to love you. And I thought that was, really powerful, because one, it never touched on, I mean, she spoke about the woman who led her in the house being beautiful and the women in the home being beautiful and so on. But this, it wasn't about intimacy. It was, I'm sorry. It was not about sex. It was about intimacy. It was about learning and appreciating the form, the whole woman as a whole.
The whole woman,
right. And that to me was pivotal. But that being said, it opened up my eyes to a whole nother, like my aunts and my grandmothers, that demographic, who either may or may not have had that desire to learn, or but they never had the opportunity to figure it out. So to have some of those conversations was very uncomfortable, but but I appreciated it, because I learned that it's not about that, because the book is an erotica book. Call it what it is. It's an erotica book. But I didn't want the book to be just about sex. You have to understand what I'm saying, so I have to write it this way. But that's not what this is about. So if you have these women who have these moments, it's not always about, do I want to be with or do I not want to be with? We may not even be there yet. That may not even be the conversation. The question is, who am I to start with? Let me know me. Let me know you. And it's easier to do that this way than it is to do it this way, especially when you're already so damaged inside,
And I don't think a lot of people understand that that's where intimacy begins. We use the word intimacy and automatically you start thinking of how you interact with other people, right? And intimacy begins within you. Intimacy can only exist when you have a level of intimacy within yourself. It can only exist truly, right? When you have a certain level of intimacy, a comfort, an understanding of intimacy within yourself. And we're always looking outward to understand ourselves and to have other people help us understand us better and to be one with someone else. And it's always about finding that oneness within yourself first.
Dr. Waters, I have a question about that. How would you tell or explain how, for a person who has been traumatized and inwardly it's so damaged, how do you tell them to learn to how to be intimate with themselves first?
It's a process. It's a process, because I think oftentimes we hold a lot of, as people who have experienced sexual trauma, specifically, we hold a lot of guilt. We hold a lot of self-blame. And it doesn't belong to us, right? the guilt doesn't belong to us. The blame doesn't belong to us. And before we can even begin to start having intimate moments with ourselves, we have to let go of the idea that we have to forgive ourselves for something someone else did to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? We have to let it go, because we spend years trying to forgive ourselves, right? Until we realize that we did nothing wrong, right? Yeah. We existed, right? Mm-hmm. We just simply existed. Mm-hmm. And we have to let go of the idea that there is blame that belongs to us first and foremost, because that guilt and that shame can eat you alive. It will eat you alive.
Well, now on to that, because when you get to that part, because Laura, you can understand what I'm about to ask when it comes down to this, and you can maybe answer that for me too. I didn't delve in a lot of that for this reason. I delved into it, but I did. I wanted it to be, because everybody's healing is different. Mm-hmm. Yes. You know, so, and I wanted to be very careful when it came down to that portion of the book. One, I had the character to accept some responsibility. And me and my brother's a therapist, and we argued about this part, because he's coming from the perspective of the therapist, respectfully so. I'm coming from the perspective of the victim, or not the victim, but the survivor of this situation. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, for me, there was some accountability that I had to take in my part of what happened to me. And because I'm writing a story with my story as being the focal point, with other people's story in addition to, I decided to honor what, because I don't know your story of healing. I only know mine. Mm-hmm. So I could only honor that. But it came to, the argument was, he felt like the character was taking the blame, as you say, and taking the guilt. And I said, no. And that's why I wrote specifically, there was a part where she said, I knew that me and this person were going to be in there alone. I didn't have to go into the house. I knew that, that I didn't have to, that he was drunk, that I didn't have to stay. These are, because it becomes a time that a choice was made when you get to a certain age, because you don't want to talk about if this is something that's happening and you enjoyed it at a certain point in time, after the violation had been consistent, or if the violation was going on and maybe you were getting some sort of benefits, from it. Not saying that that's the case for everybody, but now 14, 15, 16, 17, it becomes a point where a choice is being made. That's the part of the story that I wrote, which the character said, no, I'm not blaming. I'm saying, for this, I have to take some accountability for the choices that I made too in this. Is that a wrong way to view it when you're speaking from the point of pointing blame? Because you said we have to accept that we don't have any blame in a situation. How do you handle that?
A couple of questions first. When you say 14, 15, are you saying 14, 15 years down the road, or age 14, 15?
Age. I was just saying a number. Okay. Like when you get to an age, because a 7, 8, 9-year-old, we like to say they don't know what they're doing. 7, 8, 9 years old, they're kids. But I'm saying when you get to an age where decisions are being made.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. I first of all, I don't want to use the words right and wrong, right? Okay. Because they have energy to them. And I just don't want to use those words. What I will say, speaking as a coach, as a therapist, and as an individual who is also a sexual assault survivor, that my understanding of choice is molded by my upbringing and my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I, in that particular definition, and unfortunately by the understanding of a lot of people who either haven't experienced it or come from a time where they are very comfortable blaming the victim, right? Of course, they're going to blame the 14-year-old who got assaulted because you should have known better, right? Mm-hmm. But how should I have known better if this is supposed to be a person of authority in my life? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How should I have known better if I've been, experiencing sexual assault and molestation since I was 4 years old? How am I supposed to know better when this is the one thing of all the things that I'm experiencing in my life that feel good to me? And I can't even articulate what parts feel good and what parts don't, because everything is upside down. Everything in your life as a sexual assault victim is upside down. Right is wrong. You are actually taught to walk toward the wrong, right? You are taught to ignore the red flags, right? And walk towards the fire. That is what you are taught as a child. And so when you're 14 and 15 years old, they assume that you know better to make the right choices, but nothing is right because all of the stages of development have been flipped upside down for you.
Completely altered, yeah.
Does that make sense? So
it makes a lot of sense.
15-year-old, right, who is now walking towards this sexual assault because it's the only thing she's known all of her life, I think there's a part of her that knows everyone else is going to know it's wrong, right? But this father figure or this adult figure or this male role model is telling me that in this moment, you know what I mean? Like all of this confusion, it's the only thing I know for certain. This confusion is the only thing that has been consistent in my life, right? I'm walking towards it.
I think it starts with a few conversations, and I like what you brought up there, Dr. Walters, of the upbringing. My father used to say something to me all the time as a child that I never understood until I had children. He would say something to the effect of, there's a difference between children growing up and then them being raised. Raised is an action word, that means that the parent is putting some action behind the children's development. And so with that, I would say that there has to be some conversations. The first one being teaching our children, both male and female, to listen to their intuition and introducing that conversation to them very early.
Right.
It's a conversation I would have with my girls when they were very small. I would tell them, listen to that inner voice. And when I'm not around, you need to be familiar with that inner voice so that when I'm not around,
right,
you still have that guidance system that you are very much tapped into, and you don't have any problem with hearing it and trusting it and following it. So that's number one.
One of the great things they know about you, Dr. Lori, is that you will always believe them, right?
Oh, yes.
You go into a lot of these houses, and some of these children who are being assaulted know that even if they did tell the truth, no one would believe them anyway.
And that's my story there. I was told that it was a dream. I was told that I was dreaming.
Right. Or they will believe you and tell you to be quiet about it. Right.
I probably would have taken that, honest and true, over you just negating that it happened at all. Acknowledge it. For me, I think I was told, and I say that I was told it was a dream. I think that I'm being told to believe that it's a dream. Like, I need you to that this is a dream, so you can leave the conversation alone. You dreamt that. And it was really bothersome, to me. But one thing I can appreciate, and not to go get real churchy or anything like that, there was one, for me, I don't remember pain. I don't remember a lot of pain, I will say that. But there was an incident, one of those incidences that I remember an initial pain, like I don't know if it was a pinch or break or whatever it was initial sharp pain. I jumped in the pain just as quick as I felt that it was gone. And I always wondered, like, well, why did I feel that and not of any of the other moments? I can't remember any pain. And my spirit told me clear as day, for this moment, because they were going to tell you that this was a dream, and you would have second guessed everything about what happened to you because you had no pain to prove anything. That was the beginning of me understanding that pain produces purpose. Pain is not pointless. So if you're suffering through it, it has to serve a purpose. And that pain was my purpose, to remind me, So when they come in your face and tell you that you know that it happened because you have a scar to prove it. You have that scar, that memory to prove. And that's the only reason why it existed. And that's the only moment that I have of me, that I can say that I wouldn't felt any sort of pain for me.
And people, thank you for sharing that, Lakisha, because people, goodness, people want to shut this conversation down. Dr. Walters, you and I, we experience it, right? In our families, and it is a very fine line to walk, especially from speaking for myself, to share my story, but not share their story.
Right.
Because, you know, it was incest. My situation, well, at least one of them, two of them was incest. So it's a very fine line to walk to make sure that I'm telling my story, but not divulging too much of the family, for the simple fact that this kind of stuff right here, they're not ready to, they want to shut the conversation down. We are kind of like, we're like the anomaly.
Yeah.
You know, and we make things uncomfortable for other people. So it's, you dreamt that, so then I don't have to deal with it. I need you to believe that you dreamt it, so then we can never have this conversation again, or we don't need to have this conversation again because it was a dream. Yeah. And so that's the reason why I love this book. It's the reason why I love what I do. I love what Dr. Walters does. And I love that we can kind of play off of each other and be able to work together in this vein, because these are the kinds of conversations that need to be had.
Right. Right.
Because it's not like it has stopped. It's not like, you know, people are not molesting children anymore. It is happening. And so we have to, I find it my business to create the space where, if it should happen, I hope that it doesn't, but if it should happen, you at least now have a safe space where you can come and you can express your hurt, and you can have some folks love on you appropriately.
Right.
You know, that's what this space is all about. So there was one character in this book,
Uncle Frank.
I wanted, and I posted it in the SWW book club thread. I wanted to punch Uncle Frank in his throat
a few times.
a few
times, yeah.
And it was really odd too, because it was like, before anything was ever, even before his story was ever even told, just off the top, like, I just didn't like this dude.
Yeah, he was very, you know, listen, the funniest thing is those scenes, those Thanksgiving scenes, the family scenes, Thanksgiving, and then I think it was like a Sunday dinner, were the best scenes to write for me. Like, those were the best parts to write. It was so fun, because I visualized that
in the writing.
Right,
too,
you know,
by the way.
I had a ball with that, because people really don't understand, because I do write plays and I write the books. I have to see
it,
this, you know. So I'm writing, I'm laughing, I'm, you know, so, and I know y'all hate him, but he is my favorite character.
I wanted to just
he is my favorite. He is my favorite. But this is the part that, again, me and my brother, my piece, because again, I told you I did a lot of research with a lot of different people, you know, as I wrote. I was going to go to Church Way. I decided against that, because, you know, when she was invited to go to church, I was like, no, I don't want to do that, you know. But with Uncle Frank, here's the thing: is every molester the villain? That's the question for me. I am not friends with my molester, but like you just said, you have some that are your family. Now you're in this position, this love, hate, or I don't even know if I'm mad at you. You know, my anger and hurt was pointed towards my mother. I didn't give my molester any grief. We were at church. He was a cousin that grew up with us, but he wasn't our cousin, but he grew up with us. We laughed, we joked, and I never understood why all of my anger was pointed this way, and I could laugh and joke with this one. But then there's another molester that I don't like him. I don't like his spirit. Not even really about what he did. I don't like him as a person. So I didn't know how to go about writing that, because for me, I'm this way with the two people that I can speak about. So then I'm talking to people, and like you just said, a lot of times it was family members that they were not mad at. There were a few of them that didn't like them, or like you have people who suffered through rape and they didn't really know the person. There was different stories, but for the most part, it was somebody that they loved.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, why? What happened? You know, every pedophiles, like rapists, we had that conversation. I feel like a rapist is a person who wants to hurt you. they want you to scream. They want you to be in pain. That's what they feed off of. Then you have your pedophiles, in my opinion. Let me be, Dr. Waters, I am not an expert in this. This is my opinion of the what it is. I don't want you, but then you have your pedophiles. Like I always say, not saying he did it or didn't, I don't know. But like your Michael Jacksons, who are like still in a childlike mind, who are attracted to younger people. They don't want to hurt you. That's why they give you the drugs and the stuff like that to try to calm you, because they don't want you to be in an uncomfortable place. They want to fulfill their need. So it's kind of like, we can do all of these wrong things and believe that we can be forgiven for any of these wrong things. But when a pedophile makes based on what y'all the sciences say, or the readings say, that most people who molest tend to have been molested. If that's the case, then they have a mental illness too, based on what you're saying. The textbook says. So then, why do we hate them? I was that person. No, I know. No. I'm not saying that. Don't kill me. Dr. Boy, listen.
I understand.
Okay. I'm right there.
I was Rikers Island, some island, the police, where they sent all of the worst people. Oprah had did the lady that went out there who did an interview with them. I forgot the interviewer's name, but I was trying to figure out, why are we paying our tax dollars, paying for this island, for all of these horrible criminals on this island? Blow the island up. That was me. Blow the island up. What is we wasting all this money for? Right. But then I had a family member who did not hurt me, but hurt someone else that I love. But this person who did it is somebody I love greatly. Now I'm stuck. How can I forgive them, but want to blow the island up over here? So this is where Uncle Frank came from. Because though I don't believe Uncle to do anything. I really believe Uncle Frank was overwhelmed by this. He was a drunk. He was a drunk. And even if he did have something happen to him, that he had those desires, I feel like the alcohol is what brought that. This is a character. It's what brought that out, where he may have been able to suppress those desires in his, sober state. But being an alcoholic, he couldn't. How do we handle that? How do
This is beautiful. I just was having this conversation with a client just yesterday, literally just yesterday afternoon. And I was explaining to her that in my own experience, if you go back through my personal Facebook page, go back far enough, I want to say it was maybe last year, where one of my abusers sent me a friend's request on Facebook, and I went off. Okay, was completely gone by the fact that he would, send that request. And I think now backwards, and I'm like, now that I know what I know, because as I posted the other day, it's all right to know something today that you didn't know yesterday, right? Now that I know what I know that he sent that request because he's trying to go through his own healing process, right? And so who am I now to then deny him of that? I had to get to a space where I fully forgave him, fully forgave all of my abusers, and understand that they are a whole person, and understand that, yes, they did something horrible. Yeah, they sure did. But there are still people who love them, right? There are still people who care about them. And that one thing that they did is not all of who they are. Right. Let's be honest. We've all done horrible things. We've all caused pain to people, but we are not judged on that one thing that we did. And I can't sit here and say that you did that and you've never done any good or been a blessing to anybody in your entire life. That would be very, I feel like, stupid of me, if I could say it that way. And so I was expressing this to the client on yesterday, and I really felt like it was, like a shift for her by me sharing my perspective and letting her know, if I had the opportunity today, now knowing what I now know, if he were to send me another friend's request, I know I would not respond in the same manner. I just wouldn't, because I have a completely different understanding and viewpoint of who he is. And especially taking into account what you were saying a moment ago, that the average person who has abused someone was abused themselves. The last person that assaulted me, I later learned that 15, 16 years old, he was having sex with grown women, you know, who were violating him. So I think it's kind of like you said a minute ago, Lakisha, everybody's healing is different. And it's not lateral. It's a very up and down. It's going to look different every single day, you know, but I think the idea when we are talking about healing from sexual assault trauma is just to simply be a more healed version of yourself today than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I have a question for you. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Walters.
If I can intervene on that,
yes.
You know, let's start with the understanding that we have lived in a rape culture, right? Since the beginning of time. And so even before we talk about the molesters and the assaulters and the rapists, you know, we find that all of these people now are being accused and arrested for things that at the time, not making it okay and not condoning it by any means, but they're being arrested for things that they didn't even realize based on the culture that they were raised in, that they were even doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so when the women who, of course, weren't saying no out of fear that they would lose their jobs, out of fear that they couldn't take care of their children, out of fear that they would, you know, their marriages would end if they lost their position or whatever it was, out of fear that they spoke forward, these men who were born and raised in a rape culture took their yes as confirmation, right? Mm-hmm. Not knowing that because they were in positions of authorities, that yes wasn't, it wasn't a, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't a legal yes, not the word legal, but what is it? Ethical. It wasn't an ethical yes, right?
Okay.
We ethically, you don't have the right to approach someone who is your subordinate, right? You don't have that right. It is unethical of you because you are in a position of authority, right? And they might be too afraid to say no, right? So they feel like they've been assaulted. They're living in this world where they have been assaulted, where they have been victimized, and the person who has done the raping or the assaulting or the aggressing, like they have no clue that they've done anything wrong because they were born and raised in a rape culture. And now they're waking up and being arrested for something that they didn't even know they did wrong, right? And again, I'm not condoning it. I'm not by any means making any excuses for any of that. But we have to understand the culture that we lived in, because just as we knew at some point and accepted that we were going to have to deal with a certain level of emotional, verbal, physical assault, we grew up knowing that, right? And we were just taught to accept it. They grew up knowing that there was a certain level of verbal, sexual, you know, kind of aggression, right? That they could have without going too far. Right now, our perceptions of what we really experience are two completely different things. So when you start from people who are already born and raised into a rape culture, we have to start there. We have to start with their understanding of what rape and assault and inappropriate aggression actually is. Right. And
because so the definition has changed over time.
Absolutely.
Has it not? Yeah. Our understanding has shifted. So, you know, the laws and the way that we approach everything, even the healing, has to be slightly different. Lakisha, I want to ask you, I've been itching to ask you this question because I know that it's going to come up for you. What would you say to the person that says, this is just in an erotica book and, you know, I don't know what something negative that they might have to say about the book? How would you approach a person that has that perspective of this amazing book?
I've had that again, especially with those of religious beliefs.
Of course.
So the first thing I would say is you didn't read the book. You skimmed the book, but you didn't read the book. if you're saying that, because if you are of a person, if you know this woman's story, the book starts off with her telling you her past, of why her past, for lack of a better word, her past of her present, you know, where she is now, that she's a widow. So this recent past of hers, then it gets into who she is now and who she is now unhappy. That's the first thing. So now this is my past. You know who I am from my past. You know who I am now, and you also have to know that I am an unhappy person. My favorite thing in this book, that's not a character, is the ability to be able to get into Lily's head, because she talks a lot in her head, and that is the most important part of the book, because that's the part of the woman you do not see. That's the part. We're having a conversation right now, and even though we have expressed ourselves easily, there are thoughts that we have not shared with each other or those who are viewing right now. That's just part of human nature. You know, whether we didn't get a chance to say it, or we just thought, you know what, maybe not now. However it goes, you get access to that part of Lily in the book. And if you just get to that part, then you have to know that this is not an erotica book, because I'm telling you the story of a woman, both outward and inward, right there alone. If you watch her go through this transition, you can appreciate, because she takes you on a journey, even the journey you want her to go on. Right. She's not only going on the journey of erotica, she's also saying, I might want the world you want me to want. Just let me ride this wave and let me see what I want in all aspects. So give her a moment. But if you're going to go with me, you're going to have to go all the way with me. Meaning that you can't just go with me with the man and woman walking down the aisle. You got to go with me for the whole ride and let me find out what I want. And if you don't do that, then you get the woman that you walk past on the street and say, oh, she must have been molested. No, she ran into you. You didn't let her go through the journey the way she was supposed to, so she can figure it out. You know,
right. And I think based on the way people comprehend, read, listen to, and perceive the book, you're gonna have one of three extremes, and it's gonna be the understanding of brokenness, the understanding of deviancy, or the understanding of liberation. It's gonna be one of the three. You know, or maybe all three if you're actually paying attention.
Oh, but be clear though, I wrote it and I still clutch pearls when I read the story. I really do, because I hadn't read it in a while. There's one scene that I'm still ashamed that I wrote. Be honest with you, and that's something I got to work through. You know, but you know, that delves into the different fetishes and things like that. It exists. It does exist. You know, I did not make this up. You know, but you know, but that again is a conversation that we don't have. And I tell people all the time, when it comes down to a fetish, a lot of times it's because we're not. Some of these things, say for instance, let's just keep it PG. Cheating, just cheating, just a man and woman in a relationship, that is cheating. They may say, well, let's have an open relationship. If you're going to do this anyway, let's just have an open relationship. When you take that off, the sneaky part of it off, and that was open, you're less likely to cheat because it's no longer appealing to you anymore. You've talked about it, your wife knows about it, your husband knows about it now, and it's open. It seems like it's not even a thrill anymore. Most of the time, those fetishes get away with us because we're not talking about it. And it festers and it festers and it grows. And if you just, even with the pedophile, if you just talk to somebody that you can feel that you can be honest with, you might can get past this if this is something that you don't want to embrace. And I've learned that even with this book, you know, there were some things I thought I wanted, you know, and I'm writing it and going through the motions. I'm like, I don't really think I want that. But that's because I didn't hide that. I gave it all. I put it all out there, you know. So to me, you know, it is. I'm not going to lie and tell anybody that do not read this with your children. I mean, like, it absolutely is what you think it is, but it do serve a purpose.
So are we going to have like, huh? I'm sorry.
No, I was saying I would agree that in life, as a general rule, suppression leads to deviancy in every aspect. Like that's just that's what it does. Suppression oftentimes leads to deviancy. So we're gonna have to have several conversations in the future about fetishes and sexual liberation and deviancy. We're going to have to talk about those separately because those are whole clips by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to ask Lakisha, are we going to have like a Lilly in the light, or is it, I mean, are we going to hear more?
We
get more?
Look, that's the question, because of the way that it ended, it's kind of like, well, so where are we? It's kind of the way. So I am, but I do want to learn more, because I'm sorry, there was a fly, y'all. I had to cook out yesterday. But because I'm still in the healing process, and I feel like I've grown and healed quite a bit. But the next part of Lily's life, I need to grow a little bit more in order to really write that truthfully. That's the reason why I didn't get too deep into the healing. Lily is not healed in a weekend. Remember, this all took place over a weekend. That's not realistic.
Which is still blowing my mind. I'm like, this is a hell of a weekend.
But keep in mind though that her significant other, they've known for years, and I remember, this isn't sudden. But the saying when they say a man knows when a woman is ready, he can see when a woman is ready. That was something visible, that there was a difference in Lily lately. That's the story behind the story. That when Lily was ready, she just didn't know she was ready. And that's what our aunt was saying. Your body is trying to tell you something. It's time now. And that is something that I think that is innate to men. Men know when you're vulnerable. They know when you're suddenly single. I don't know how they seem, but they do. They can smell it. So I feel like that is a lot of how that went. But I didn't want the book to read like she's now is walking off in bliss and love and matrimony. That's not realistic, So there is definitely going to be, I don't know if she's going to be in the light per se, but there's definitely going to be a part 2. But I might know that
I'm excited. Lily in the gray.
right. Like I'm very much not done with Lily. Like I need to know more of her story and more of her transformation, for sure.
I do too. I promise you I do. I'm ready to embrace that. And that's why I appreciate that. And I ask you, and I thank you for this platform. I thank you, Dr. Waters, also for being here. Any feedback, and I say it to everybody, good, bad, or ugly, because even the ones who don't like it and feel like it is just sex, why do you feel that way? All of it is something I can learn
let's talk
from.
About that.
So because of that way, moving forward, I know what to do. I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to tone it down. And if it's toned down, it's because that's Lily's choice. So like I don't know what she's going to do, but I do want to. I need to speak to women who went through this, because now I would need to talk to women who are healing.
Yeah.
In order to write the second.
It's like I was saying in the book club thread, that if it's triggering you, don't be mad at the trigger.
Yeah.
Don't allow the trigger to block your blessing, because the blessing is, why was I triggered? And beginning to ask those very important questions to find out what's at the root of that trigger, because the trigger is only there to show you, hey, there's something over here that needs to be healed. There's something over here that needs your attention. So that's very, very important. In the book, let's just be honest, there are some triggering points in the book, but that's the beauty of the book, because as Lily is discovering herself and becoming intimate with herself, we as the reader, we're able to do the same. We're able to see parts of ourselves and get to understand who we really are underneath those triggers. So it's an amazing piece of work, and I was just elated that that I actually know you and know the person who actually wrote this. So tell us how people can get in contact with you. If they want to talk to you more about the book, what would be the appropriate way for people to do that, Lakisha?
Well, they can order the book through Amazon. It's on Amazon. You want to go under Lakisha Love. You're gonna have to type it all out, y'all, because I'm not there yet. So you can't just put one word and it's gonna pop up.
Right.
You have to put Lakisha Love Dawn Askins, Lilly in the Dark, and it'll come up. It is there. Don't let them trick you. I've noticed that. Other than that, you can email me at Laskins, Laskins 725@gmail. I do believe that is also in the book. The email is in the book. If you have any questions, I'm always available, to talk. I appreciate this. And one thing I want us to talk about at some point in time is the children's response to this. And that's what I did not get a chance to really get into. So that would definitely be a part of the second book, her daughter specifically.
Yes.
When they had that moment. I did not do that because the story was about Lilly. But we do, us women who have suffered through this, our children seeing up close the trauma. That is something that I would appreciate any feedback on, or to talk about that part more in depth.
Yeah, for sure.
Whenever you get opportunity.
For sure, we would definitely do that. Absolutely. And then Dr. Walters, our wonderful intimacy specialist, that is here, kind of holding that space for us. How can our viewers get a hold of you? How can they contact you?
Well, you can reach me through my website at rdwaltersinc.com. I'm on Instagram as RD Walters, and I am on Facebook at RD Walters Inc.
Awesome.
I did not say my webpage. That's the first thing I should say. As you can say, this is not something I do quite often, which is Love Dawn Entertainment. Love Dawn Entertainment, spelled out .com as well. Apologize. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys, this has really been a wonderful conversation for me. I trust that it was the same for you all. We've got to do this again. I know that we're going to have our book club wrap up in a couple weeks. We actually probably should talk, Lakisha, to figure out when we want to do that, so we can schedule that. But we'll have that wrap up in a couple of weeks, and I'm very excited for that conversation, just to see the other things that other readers have to say about this amazing book. If you are wanting to be a part of the book club, you can visit on Facebook, at SWW Book Club. And you can also join the Healing Everyday group as well on Facebook. And you definitely want to start by joining the Still Whole Wellness Facebook page, because that will give you access to the other two places that we do our healing. All right. So thank you guys so much for being with us and listening to this wonderful conversation. I thank my guests so much. You guys are amazing. You guys are absolutely amazing. For those of you who are wanting to reach out to Dr. Lori and Still Whole Wellness, you can do so by going to www.stillwholewellness.com. You can reach me also on Facebook at the Still Whole Wellness Facebook page, and on Instagram at still_whole_wellness. I love you guys. I love you guys on purpose. You guys continue to follow this podcast, because this is where healing happens every single day. You guys be well and at peace.
Bye.